Welcome to the Dr. Berkson's Best Health Radio Show. And today we have one of the women that I've loved and respected for so many years in nutrition. In fact, she's often referred to as the first lady of nutrition. We're going to have Dr. Louise Gittleman. And I was just this summer, early in the summer, in Scottsdale, and I was at an event, and there was a woman there that I've seen for many years that's never really been able to get a handle on her weight. She's a lovely woman. She's tried this and that and everything. And when I saw her, she had dropped so much weight and looked so amazing. And I said to her, Donna, what did you do? And she said, did you ever hear of Dr. Ann? Dr. Louise Gittleman? This is a true story. This is not, Dr. Ann's not paying me behind the scenes to make up the story. She had gone on your program and had, within a few weeks, started to turn a corner that she had not been able to turn for years. And that's what we've got here. We've got Dr. Louise Gittleman, who writes books, many, many books, kind of similar to myself, and she's able, with her books, to give people the tools where they can turn corners that they've not been able to do for years. She's got a brand new book. That's what we're talking about today. Radical Metabolism. It's already on the best seller list. So I am so excited to learn how come when she's already been on the bestseller list, she wanted to attempt to do it again, and what this book holds for us. So welcome to the show, Dr. Ann.
Well, thank you, Dr. Devki Berkson. It's a pleasure to be with you. I've been a great admirer of yours as well for many, many years.
We go back so far. It's so fun to have people that were in on the beginning of functional medicine and knowing the power of food and the power of nutrition. How did you, I've never really asked you this because I had you on the show once before. How did you get started on this path?
Good question. It wasn't my weight way back when, back in the day. It was my skin, believe it or not. And what I learned as a very young person in my teens was that what I put in my body could show up on my face the next day. And having very sensitive and responsibly and reactive skin, if I looked at chocolate, I would see a breakout. If I looked at sugar, I'd see a breakout. So I learned early on that what I put in my body affected what I put inside my body affected what I looked like on the outside. And that was a big motivator, especially as a teenager who was starting to have all kinds of hormonal issues. And that was the real beginning of my quest. And then I read everything there was. And as you and I know, back in the day, there were very few voices that were ringing the bells of nutrition. Adele Davis was somebody that I followed. Gaylord Hauser, Mirror on the Wall, Catherine Elwood, Linda Clark. They were my heroes. So I read everything I could and then expanded my interest, went back to school after I graduated from Connecticut College, and then started on my nutritional path. So 35 years later, I'm still researching and loving what I do, just like you.
I love that. So now we've got this book, Radical Metabolism, that is really going places. So what makes this book different from all the other cajillion diet books that are out there? What are you telling us in this book that we need to know about?
I'm giving you the new thyroid cure, number one. I'm telling you it could be your gallbladder, number two. And if it's not your gallbladder, it could be stuck bile, number three. So I became very concerned with all the no to slow losers out there, with people who have an over 40 metabolism and can't lose weight like they did before the age of 40, or people in their 20s and 30s whose bodies think they have an over 40 metabolism. So I've looked at everything with a fine-tooth comb and have decided that there are 5 radical rules that everybody has to follow. And one of them, which is most unusual, kind of weird, but it truly works, is that revamping your fats, not what we've been told in this day and time, is what's a key to revising your metabolism, reviving your health, restoring your entire system, and finally losing weight when nothing previously has done the trick. And that's what the book is all about. The 5 radical rules, how to put that into work for you morning, noon, and night, as well as snacks, how to detox your system, and how to do it while you're looking great. Because what happens on all these other programs, from keto to paleo to primal to even some of the vegan programs out there, people may lose weight, but their skin starts to sag. And since skin is really my flagship area, that I was very concerned that if people were on my programs, you wouldn't be able to tell that they were actually on a diet, because the skin is toned, it's tight, and it's taut if you follow Radical Metabolism.
Okay, so you said that you have a new viewpoint on fats that's not held by many other people. So I think it focuses that we're missing a very special omega fat called omega-6 fatty acid. Can you tell us what you're talking about? You know, I remember years ago, I was in the Berkshire Mountains when Dr. Horrobin was still alive. You know, David Horrobin discovered
from Canada.
Oil. Right.
Initially from Montreal, if I'm not mistaken.
And he started Medical Hypothesis. He was such a gracious gentleman. And
yes.
It was an essential fatty acid symposium, and they had Donald Rudin talking about omega-6. They had this is like in the 1970s. They had David Horrobin talking about talking about evening primrose oil, and they had, I think, was it Barry Sears? I don't think it was Dr. Sears, but it was a third person, and they were each debating omega-6, omega-9, omega-3, and now we've got with macadamia nuts, omega-7. Can you talk to us about your understanding of what's the best way to take in oils? Which ones should we avoid? Which ones must we get?
Well, not all oils are established equally. They're not created equally. That's number one. And one thing that I want to clarify is that I think that coconut oil is here to stay. So is MCT oil. I don't think it's poison, as came out in the news recently. I think it's actually very, very healing. But we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, which means that you can't forget to have the essential fats into your diet. So many people that are following other programs are not taking the right kind of fats. You still need omega-6s, the good omega-6s.
The good omega-6s. Tell us what that is, because everyone else is telling us omega-6 is bad. So
I know that because they just rehash the same junk over and over again. I mean, an omega-3 is bad if it's exposed to heat, air, and light. It's the same thing with omega-6. So we've got to get back on track. And you and I know, because we're both seasoned enough to know this.
Well said, in such a politically correct way, when so many today are not. Okay.
Well, they're not, but years ago in the nutrition books, they would talk about vitamin F, which were the seed oils. So we're talking about oils that haven't been exposed to air, heat, and light. The good omega-6 is high in linoleic acid, which is so important, Devki. Why? Because it forms the construct of the cell membrane, which is important to protect you against toxins and keeping the nutrients in. It's also important because it feeds the mitochondria. The mitochondria is fed by the omega-6s. And this is an important piece of the missing link of all the omegas. And then when you take a look at the literature, like I have when I did Radical Metabolism, you will find something else, and that is that there is an ideal ratio, and the ratio is 4-to-1 in favor of the right kinds of omega-6s.
So what are the right kind of omega-6s? How do we get them?
Well, that's the point, because years ago when our good friend David Horrobin was around and Donald Rudin, and I hope he's still living, the omega-3 aficionado, they had the preformed omega-6s because you couldn't get them easily in vegetable oils, which were all altered and full of hexane, and now, of course, GMOs. Now we have sources beyond evening primrose oil and borage and black currant seed oil, which are still fine, but if you want it in food, which is the best way to get all of your nutrients, look to hemp seed oil. Interestingly enough, hemp seed oil has the perfect ratio. It's about 3-to-1, close to that 4-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3. And you can use that on your vegetables, use it as a salad dressing, use it in your smoothies. So 1 to 2 tablespoons a day keeps the weight away and keeps your skin, your hair, and your nails really glowing.
So 1 to 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds a day keeps the weight away. If people go to my website, drlindseyberkson.com, you can sign up for my mailing list and you get a free little ebook. And in that ebook, I give you some of my favorite recipes. And one of those recipes is my flaxseed muffin that has hemp seeds in it. It's a combination of flax seeds, hemp seeds, and chia seeds, and it gives you that amount per muffin. And we have the one muffin that has all 3 seeds if you're not fighting cancer. And if you're fighting cancer, then I've got the flaxseed muffin on roids for people who've just been diagnosed to give you that 25 grams of flaxseed a day. And then when I had chatted with you last time, I gave you, Dr. Ann, my recipe for the pudding, the flaxseed pudding that I love so much that's high in omega-7 fatty acids, which tamp down the genes that express inflammation, as well as tamp down the molecules, the cytokines that cause inflammation, that tamp down the molecule itself and the gene that even allows the molecule to express. So I give you a recipe to take the muffin, and then if you want to put some frosting on the muffin or have a little pudding along with the muffin, you can get that. So if you go to drlindseyberkson.com and sign up, you get that recipe, and you learn now today from Dr. Ann that 2 tablespoons of hemp seed a day helps the weight stay away. And that muffin is a great way to answer those questions and recipe for your weight. So it's a win-win.
And you get fiber, and fiber makes us free. So that's very important, because fiber is very important so that your system can escort all the toxins that are going to now be released when you start losing weight, because so many toxins are stored in fat, and you need that to sequester the bile acids. So this all goes together, and we didn't even plan this. I didn't even know that you had these recipes.
No. In fact, I just haven't put this book together, but I have about 150 recipes that are utterly unique. And if they don't taste like a 5-star absolute chef showed up at your door from Paris with a Parisian accent and you died and gone to heaven to eat it, then I don't want them in my book. But those are the kind of recipes I've put together. And it starts with a little teeny book that I've got available for free on the site. And we didn't chat about this at all, but hemp seeds are so important. But I didn't realize that they were what you call the great good source of omega-6.
They are. And interestingly enough, when all of this research started to come out, nobody really knew that hemp seed oil was available. And I think it's only been in the recent years, with all the interest in hemp as an alternative food and even clothing source, that we now find that you get hemp seed oil in many health food stores in the country, and it's perfectly legal in all 50 states. So it is one of the top oils that we use on the program, because as I say, if you're losing weight, I don't want any bagging, sagging, or dragging, as Dolly Parton used to say.
That's fantastic. So tell me what might be some typical meals that people eat on your Radical Metabolism diet.
Well, we get a little radical at breakfast, and this is based upon new research that, of course, we have with the importance of coffee and chlorogenic acid as being the coffee's secret weight loss weapon. And so I have a morning brew, and I tell everybody if they drink this every morning, they'll lose 18 pounds in 2 weeks. And we've proven that with all of our testing and all of our beta groups that we've done on the program, because in the morning we have people drinking the best mold-free coffee that's the highest in antioxidants and polyphenols, very high in all kinds of organic nutrients, with a little bit of A2 whey protein, some coconut milk, some herbs and spices, and maybe a little bit of just like sugar, some chicory root powder, or a little dash of stevia. And it's very, very satisfying first thing in the morning, because it jumpstarts your body and gets you into fat burning mode. But it has the protein, because I believe that as we get older, you actually need more protein, not less. So that's radical for radical metabolism.
I love to hear that. I was just sharing with you before we came on the show that I had labyrinthitis this summer, and it occurred secondarily to my trigeminal nerve, a nerve that it was affected by a dental procedure, that then that nerve affected my vestibular system, and it was like a perfect storm. And one of the things that those nerve endings did was affect the nerves that go to my taste buds. And everybody knows me throughout my whole life, knows that the most stable man in my life has been my morning cup of Joe. And my taste buds got affected by this whole scenario over the last few months, and coffee has stopped tasting good to me, and it's been an existential crisis. It's like I've lost my rituals and what tastes good to me, let alone, feeling great with my vestibular system, which is, I'm going to do a program on that. So what I'm going to do is I want you to tell me every place now where you get this coffee, how you get it, each ingredient, and I'm going to hope beyond hope that when I put all of Dr. Ann's coffee ingredients together, it's going to taste good to me now, no matter what, and I can gain some of my coffee identity back. I would be beholding unto you.
Well, very lovely. But this particular coffee, I'm gonna tell you something that a lot of my own readers of Radical Metabolism don't know. I have never been a proponent of coffee drinking. I've always allowed 1 cup of coffee in my programs, but there's such a plethora of science which made me change my mind.
Right? It's got over 1,000 phenols, beneficial compounds. It's the source of the most polyphenolic compounds that most people get a day that don't eat a lot of vegetables. It is really a healthy food.
It is, and it's very good for the blood pressure. It's good for the heart. It's good for the liver. It's just about good for everything.
Except your lower esophageal sphincter, but we'll talk about that later.
Which is another issue, but I think that if you use a little oil and the right kinds of fats and the right kind of protein, it could kind of neutralize that and act as a buffer. Uh-huh. But having said that, I want to tell you about the coffee. So I'm reading about all the benefits of coffee, and I'm saying I'm behind the 8 ball. I've got to include this because people love coffee. It's America's favorite beverage, for heaven's sakes. So I developed all kinds of taste testing groups, and we found the best coffee. And you can get the best coffee, which is Purity Coffee, and a 30% off discount coupon. When you go to radicalmetabolism.com, you get 3 freebies. You get all kinds of recipes that sound almost as delicious as yours. And we've got a report on crushing cravings. We've got a 3rd download, which is about stocking the Radical Kitchen, and then the 30%
Wait,
off.
Was that stalking or stocking?
I don't remember. It's been a long week, but whatever it is, you're going to stalk and stock at the same time.
So it's Purity Coffee. So does it come as whole beans, or does it come ground, or how does that work?
It comes as these little pods, so you have to grind it yourself. And from what I've been told by my inveterate coffee drinkers that follow me, it's very mild and it's very acceptable. But the good news is it's mold-free, because nobody until recently has recognized that coffee is a great source of mold in the diet.
Right.
So getting an organic coffee that's highly mold-free and that is the highest number of antioxidants and polyphenols of any other brand tested, these people have done impeccable research, was quite a feat. They're also coming out with a decaf variety of coffee, and it's going to have the same amount of polyphenols and chlorogenic acid as the regular brew. So I'm excited that you and your Morning Joe are going to reunite very quickly and very soon.
I've been drinking for many years Rudamaya, and they do shade-grown organic, because I wrote about it in Hormone Deception that if you don't drink organic coffee is so heavily sprayed with pesticides that by an end of a year, by just having a bold cup of coffee like a Starbucks a day in the morning, you've exposed yourself to 2 solid pounds of pesticides. And remember, pesticides make your fat cells act nasty. They create obesogenic behavior. Dr. Bruce Blumberg at UCLA coined the term. I interviewed him for Hormone Deception, and we're learning now that many chemicals in our environment in pans that are non-stick cookware that have the PFUS chemicals, those have all been found to cause fat cells to act nasty. They're hard to get rid of. They're obesogenic. And coffee that's not organic contributes to the same thing. So it's so wonderful to hear that there are brands that are pesticide-free and that are mold-free. I don't know if Rudamaya is mold-free or what you have to go through as a coffee company to say that you've passed that assessment. So that's I can't wait to try that. And what else do you put, Dr. Ann, in your morning coffee?
So in the morning coffee, we do a scoop of my Fat Flush Whey protein, which is sourced out of, it's either out of New Zealand or it's sourced out of Belgium these days. I have to check with our raw material supplier, but it is the purest we could find. It's hormone-free, made from A2 milk. So it is a non-mutated casein. So it's the purest whey-derived protein on the planet. And just one scoop will get your protein levels higher, and it's very helpful for weight loss because of the isoleucine and the leucine components of the amino acids. So you mix that in, plus 2 tablespoons of coconut milk. I'm thinking about my recipe now. And 2 tablespoons of cacao, which you can take or you can't, depending upon if you want a little extra polyphenol punch. A little bit of ginger, and then a little bit of sweetener, either monk fruit or a little bit of stevia, or just like sugar, which is chicory root, whichever one you prefer. You can use that. It'll give it a little bit of take the edge off the taste. And it's very, very delicious. People lose weight, feel great, and they can actually sleep better at night. And I have to really look into my research to figure out why that's the case. But people have been telling me that their sleep has been more sound and more complete.
This is great. And we didn't plan this, but my blog that I just published about 5-6 days ago is What is A2 Milk? The new milk coming to town and what you should know about it. So if you go to drlindseyberkson.com and you go into the blog section, the milk that Dr. Ann makes her whey protein out of is the exact blog that I just published a few days ago on my blog website, Berkson's blog. So how do you like that? We're just always in sync, Dr. Ann.
We're in sync, we're in synchronicity, but there are no coincidences. That's wonderful. But the good news is that we're trying to help people use their favorite foods already just to get slim and even healthier. So these are not really strange and exotic foods. They're foods that are just going to knock up the quality of what you're taking so that they're a cut above.
Right. True harmonic convergence.
Yeah, indeed. And it's not 1987 anymore. Yes, indeed.
So, what else do people do? What is the detox that you talk about in Radical Metabolism?
So it's a 4-day kind of priming the pump, getting the body ready to detoxify, healing your bile, detoxifying the bile, giving the gallbladder a rest, the liver a rest. And there are 2 juices that we use that are low sugar juices. We put a lot of prebiotics in there, including the juice of jicama, which is very delicious if it's done properly. And throughout the day, I think we've got 2 to 3 times a day, you have a watercress soup, because the research has shown that watercress is an amazing fat fighter, number 1, and cancer fighter, number 2. So we have the watercress soup, the AM and the PM juices, and it's quite a successful program. People will start to lose weight immediately, which gives them motivation to continue on the 21-day and then go to maintenance. So it's a healthy program.
So it's a 21-day program and then maintenance.
Which I give them a week of menus. And we support everybody, on Facebook, through our videos, through our Instagram, all over the place. We're giving support because this is a bit radical. This is different than what you've been told. This is not keto. It's not ketogenic. It is not paleo, and it's not 100% raw, but everybody that follows those particular regimens, which have their definite place and value, can use the upgraded oils, the detox, and the support for the gallbladder, the Radical Metabolism uniquely brings to the table.
How is it radical with all these things that you do, like the watercress soup twice a day, the very special coffee, the 4-day detox? Is that what makes it radical, or is it that the foods are also different? I mean,
it's radical on many different levels.
Okay.
It's radical because we rewrite the rules of nutrition. These are new rules of nutrition. We're throwing out the kind of pots and pans that we were told were healthy. Those are not true anymore. We're throwing out the oils that they're told you not to eat. So the forbidden fats that they told you not to eat, we're telling you to never stop eating. Those are the good omega-6s. We've also introduced the forbidden flavor that nobody has really dealt with before, which is the importance of bitters in the American diet for your gallbladder and your digestion and your skinny bugs. So there's a lot that's quite radical, and people will read it and say, wow, wow, so much information. But I didn't need to write a 35th book if I wasn't giving you new information.
Right. So what are the bitters and where do we get them?
Well, the bitters are better. Number one, that's my mantra. Bitters are better. And you get them in all kinds of fruits. Grapefruit is a primary bitter. The lemon peels are a primary bitter. The grapefruit peels, your orange zest, all of those are bitter. Ginger is considered a bitter in terms of herbs and spices. You've got gentian root. You've got angelica for bitters. You've got your vegetables, your leafy greens like arugula and watercress, primary bitters, as well as escarole and endive. So they're all over the place, but I want you to be eating more of them because it will help the digestion and help the bile thin itself out, flow more freely, and it also will trigger your gallbladder, if you're lucky enough to still have one, to release the bile in a timed way so that you can digest the fats that are coming down the pike. So it's a pretty radical, different program because, again, nobody's talking about the fats, they're not talking about bitters, and they're sure as heck omitting the importance of the gallbladder, which is why radical metabolism is kind of out there and may seem a little different, but we're really uniquely speaking to a group of people out there who have never lost weight before, are finding it very difficult since their gallbladder was removed to lose weight. And then the situation gets worse because of the connection that I found between another radical fact here, the radical connection between the alliance between the gallbladder and the thyroid. So this is completely new information that will help people almost immediately. We get results within 3 weeks.
That's interesting you should say that because in med school, they teach you that the gallbladder symptoms are the 3 Fs, 40, fat, and
female.
And that really sounds like hypothyroidism. So tell us a little bit about this new connection between gallbladder issues and thyroid issues.
Well, I stumbled on it, my dear. I didn't go out seeking these things. They kind of come to you when the idea as the time has come, so to speak. There was some research that was done at Harvard as well as Finland, of all places. And what they discovered was that individuals with a slowed down bile release, and those, of course, without a gallbladder, were 7 times more likely to suffer from hypothyroidism. And then I began speaking to all of my functional medicine friends, and everybody was saying, we're finding with so many women that are fat, female, and 40, that once they get their gallbladders out, their thyroids go south. And when I started hearing that over and over again, I said, this is a pattern of so many women that can't lose weight. So let me see what the research has to suggest. And apparently, when the bile is released, it enables the body to trigger the T4 to transfer more successful into T3 through an enzymal response. And all of that has been proven.
Conversion factor. So your thyroid makes 80% to 90% of T4 and about 10% of T3, but it's only T3 that signals the thyroid receptors that are living all throughout your biological real estate, and the thyroid is the most global hormone almost that there is. And so the body has to convert T4 to T3. And we've known that zinc is a converter, selenium is a converter, that stress blocks that conversion. And now you're saying that you have noticed a pattern where bile is an unappreciated converter of T4 to T3.
It is, and whether that bile comes in the form of bitters that enables your system to digest and to secrete bile more succinctly, or it comes in the form of ox bile, which you can get at the health food store, or the vegetarian angelica root or gentian root, or you take certain nutrients that will thin the bile. And I write about all of that with food supplements and sources in the book. So that's where your choline, inositol, and methionine, the lipotropic nutrients, come in handy. And they're very deficient.
I love lipotropic nutrients. They've been around for decades and they're out of trend within the nutritional cacophony.
I know it.
They're
and
fantastic.
I know it. And I think to myself, poor Carlton Fredericks, poor Dr. Atkins. Those were the three major nutrients to break down fats. This is so important for hormonal dysfunction, important for the liver. So that's where my program comes in handy, because I give you the foods that contain the nutrients, or I give you a supplement that I created called the Bile Builder that will enable the conversion to take place even more succinctly.
So I have to share with you one of my favorite bitters and what I love to do. And I went to Whole Foods last week and they didn't have it and it made me sad. But I love to go to Whole Foods in their leafy vegetable section. And they usually have at least the Whole Foods near my home. And I live in Austin, which is the corporate center for Whole Foods. And I used to go to be a scholar, a hormone scholar at Tulane, which there was the second Whole Foods ever created. So Austin was the first city, and then New Orleans, of all things, was the second city. Of
How interesting!
Now gone global, but I love dandelions, and dandelions are bitter.
Yes,
they usually have a dandelion where the stem is greenish gray, and then they have another dandelion which they didn't have sadly last week, which is a stem which is somewhat reddish green, and that reddish green stemmed dandelion is much sweeter, though it still is a bitter, than the gray green one. And I take it home, I wash them well. I use Skywriter plant material to get rid of all the parasites and eggs and things now that we really want to protect ourselves from. And then I let most of that dry and put it in a glass container with a little teeny bit of moist paper towel with a very tight top. And then any of your greens will stay totally like they're fresh, and you just wash them and put them in the refrigerator for 6 days. And I pull out some of those crisp dandelion greens with the red stem, and they taste like chips. They have a chip quality. So they're like eating bitter chips is what I call them.
Wow. That's a good tip, the bitter chip. I like that very much. Thank you for sharing that.
The bitter chip tip. You know, I love what you're saying about bile, because there's about 400,000 women who lose their gallbladders a year. And I was at an IFM. You know, there's 3 programs in the United States where when medical doctors or nurse practitioners want to go on and go to functional medicine because they feel like they're not getting their patients well or they're burned out, they do these 3 to 4 year higher board certification programs. One is called IFM. I lecture for the other 2. I haven't been invited yet to lecture for IFM.
You will.
Thank you. They had a functional gastroenterologist from the NIH, the National Institute of Health. He had a 6-year waiting list, Dr. Ann, to get in to see him. 6 years. And he was showing with MRIs and imaging on his presentation what happens when you get your gallbladder removed. And he was showing that the gallbladder is the piggy bank for bile, and then the liver makes it, the gallbladder stores it, and at times of a meal, it squeezes like a toothpaste tube enough bile adequately to help solubilize everything, but you're not supposed to be exposed to bile all the time, or unhealthy thickened bile, which I'm going to have you talk about in a minute. And he was showing that when you get your piggy bank that stores the bile removed, every single person then has a drip 24/7. Some people are more at risk of cancer from that, others aren't. Some of the studies show the risk, some of the studies refute the risks. They've never been able to have a consistent trend, but some people are at heightened risk from being exposed to nonstop bile, but you don't get enough healthy bile at each meal. And nobody talks about what to do or the link of that to stomach acid, which is something we could maybe circle around to in a little bit. But so bile is so important, and when people even get their bile piggy banks removed, nobody talks to you about taking any bile. It boggles my mind. Bile boggles my mind.
Bile is brilliant, and bile is beautiful. And that's the reason that I wrote this book. It really was to bring back bile, make it as important a nutritional area as probiotics. And what is really frightening to me, and I'm sure you've got to notice this too, is that everybody is jumping on the bandwagon of higher fat diets. Well, half these fats, many of the population can't digest, for heaven's sakes. So if you don't have enough bile when you're constantly eating these higher fat foods, what's a body to do? So the reality here is that when you're eating foods that are high in fat and you don't have a gallbladder, you need to take a bile replacement. I talk about the foods here, from the bitters to the bile builder that I created with all the nutrients you need to break down the bile. And the other thing you have to remember, which I don't think people pay attention to, is that not only is overweight a slow but sure side effect of having your gallbladder removed because of the connection between the thyroid that we've chatted about, but you're losing your ability to utilize and assimilate all of the fat-soluble vitamins. So there goes vitamin A for your skin, vitamin D for your immunity, vitamin E for your heart, vitamin K for your bones. So there is a real domino effect with this very important issue. So the gallbladder is not a throwaway organ. It does not belong in the throwaway organ club. I tell everybody that.
I love that. Does not belong in the throwaway organ club. That's really well said. Well, I went up to this NIH functional gastroenterologist after his talk, and I said, do you know about the research in the 50s of Dr. Copper, who linked a lot of gallbladder issues with insufficient stomach acid and low thyroid at that time? And he was not interested in talking about it at all. He wasn't interested. There's people who are really brilliant and have a lot of brilliant things to say, but they're not necessarily open-minded to brilliant things that other researchers have come up with.
Well, it's
and that
a shame.
Bile boggles my mind.
That's another. Bile boggles our mind because bile is a boggler, is a mind boggler. But let me tell you something. My good friend Jonathan Wright wrote a very interesting book about the importance of hydrochloric acid. And what I write about myself is the lack of hydrochloric acid, which also acts as a stimulant to the release of bile from the gallbladder. And so many people are HCl deficient. It's another underlying cause of the gallbladder issues.
Exactly. And that's physiology. You eat food, your parietal cells make stomach acid, they nudge cholecystokinin, CCK, which nudges the gallbladder to release bile. It's a process. And as you age, a lot of people lose that ability. Not everybody does, but a lot of people do. In fact, I have one of my hours of lecture in Nashville coming up the week after next is an hour on stomach acid. I'm reigniting the medical community and the gut module about how you assess it, the importance of it. But I have a question, because one of the things that came up in my research and for that talk is that there's a number of gastroenterologists that are specializing in reflux, and there's two sphincters. There's the lower esophageal sphincter between the esophagus and your stomach, and there's a higher esophageal sphincter that keeps the food going south after you've eaten it rather than it coming up. And they're saying that aerosolized bile, if you have too much or both sphincters are loose, that it goes up and harms the esophagus. So my question, they say the same with pepsin. So now I'm teaching to take HCl without pepsin. How do we know exactly how much bile to take that's safe for us, that won't give us these possible downstream effects of it? And I've been wondering, and you're the bile queen, so I'd love to hear what you have to say.
I was once the parasite queen.
What namikers?
We've moved on down or up in the world. So what I would suggest is this. The research seems to suggest that anywhere from 150 to 200 milligrams of bile salt seems to be quite safe. That's number one. Number two, if you have lax sphincters, upper and lower, in terms of what's going on in your body, much of that can be controlled through diet. That's number two. And number three, to soothe and heal the mucosal membranes. One of the things that I promote in the book for those that have reflux and issues that may have resulted from the splashing of too much bile or even HCl into the esophagus higher up where it needs to be, is the use of pine nut oil, which is high in pinoleic acid, which will soothe and repair from the top to the bottom, from the oral cavity to the anus, completely repair that in about 3 weeks. So I would do all of those things.
Pine nut oil, like the little pine nut?
Like in pine nut oil, indeed. It's
P-I-N-E, pine nut oil.
Pine nut oil. I talk about Siberian pine nut oil, how you take it before meals to kind of repair the entire gut. And it's much more successful in reparation and repairing and renewing and refreshing the gut and the stomach and leaky gut and ulcers and ulcerative colitis and the GERD and the erosion in the esophagus. Much more successful than anything I've ever used, including any of the licorice root extracts, including glutamine and even slippery elm.
So do you sell this on your site, Pine Nut Oil, or where do people get this?
If they get Radical Metabolism, number one, they'll see the list. And I believe when they get the 3 freebies, it's in the Radical Metabolism stocking your pantry list.
So in that list, you tell people where they get that, where they can order
I have
it?
a brand name mentioned. Yes, indeed.
Okay. So if you buy her book.
Buy this book.
Which is Radical, Radical Metabolism.
Radical.
By Dr. Louise Gittleman, the First Lady of Nutrition, who has been around overlapping similarly to the time. I think maybe I've been around maybe a little longer than you.
Not much,
just a little bit. And we both have a passion for what we do and a passion for sharing brand new cutting edge information. In this book, I'm excited really to try that pine nut oil. I'm going to actually be writing you an email sometime soon after the show, because I want to dive into some of these things and see if I can enjoy my morning cup of joe. And we've learned so many things today. And remember, if you go to drlindseyberkson.com, you can get my free flaxseed ebook, and I'm about to launch my brand new other ebook. I'm going to have several ebooks. I have an ebook on there, Hidden Carbs, how you can avoid hidden carbs that you didn't think were in your diet. And I've got another ebook that is 5 unique ways to tend your hormones that are totally atypical, like they're almost, I should have called them radical hormone tips like you've done with your book, because they're radical ways to caretake your estrogen and make sure you're not at risk of cancer or recurrence. So if you go to my website, you get those. And if you go to my blog section, Berkson blog, you're going to learn about the A2 milk, the difference between A1 and A2 milk. It was all been introduced in New Zealand 20 years ago, but it's coming soon to a grocery store near you. And also, if people want to get your whey made from the good milk, will that be available on your website, or how do people get that? Are all these products that you're talking about, people can purchase them through you? Is that the deal?
They can purchase most of the products through us, and they're listings that you will get when you receive some of these downloads, so that they're links to some of the most important products for the refrigerator, for the pantry, for the freezer. We'll give you direct links.
So where should people go right now to get these links and get
RadicalMetabolism.com.
RadicalMetabolism.com. That's what people should do.
That's what they should do.
Okay. So this has been a joy. Is there anything else that you want to summarize? This is our goodbye summary now that you want to say to the audience that's been excited to hear all this great information, Dr. Ann. And by the way, I hate it when I have someone on the show or they have me on their show and they're a health person and they don't look healthy and they're kind of overweight. And for people that are only listening to this show and not having the ability to see the show, because it's going to come out in both video and audio only, Dr. Ann walks her talk, looks her walk, and is a gorgeous, healthy, trim, real deal. And it is an honor to have you on the show. Really, I feel like you're a sister of the heart, I do. I'm so glad you're still in love and passion for nutrition and food, and still sharing that word, and it's out there and successful, and lucky us that we get to hear you. And I hope you stay healthy and well, Ann. I really do.
And you too. Have a happy new year.
Okay, blessings, my dear, blessings. Bye, everybody. Don't forget to go to drlindseyberkson.com, or if you want to go to iTunes. And if you want to give a review, because information like this, you can't pay for it. It's so great. You don't even have to pay for it, but it's really a treasure. Blessings, everybody. Bye.